I'm Austin Lugo.
I'm Andrew Harp.
This is With Nothing to Say.
Let's talk about La Note.
So before we get started next week we are going to be doing a double feature. Andrew, these were your picks. What movies are we watching next week?
We're going to watch the Jonathan Demme directed concert film Stop Making Sense and the David Byrne feature film True Stories. Um, Big fan of both. I feel like you kind of have to watch both. Since you haven't seen either one, it would be hard for me to pick just one. And they're both Talking Heads related. They're both David Byrne related.
Very excited. I have very little knowledge on Talking Heads or David Byrne, so I've heard like a couple of songs by Talking Heads, but I haven't listened to a full album or anything. So I think this will be a fun experience. We've never really done any sort of it's not a documentary per se, but anything really in this genre. So it'll be nice to do something a little different, a little new. I'm excited.
Absolutely, me too.
All right, so this week I got to pick the movie. I picked La Notte, Michelangelo Antonioni, 1961, part of a trilogy. La Ventura, La Notte, and Le Clés. Le Clés? Am I saying that right? I feel like I'm not saying that right.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It's an Italian movie.
Italian movie. It's one of my favorites. Antonioni has long been one of my favorite directors. I think visually, his films are just above and beyond almost everyone out there. He has an eye for cinema that almost no one else has, especially his stuff in black and white. I find his later stuff, especially stuff in color, to be a little bit confusing, a little bit slow. Michelangelo Antonioni has this weird thing where he's walking the line between the Italian neorealists of the 1950s, like Bicycle Thieves, and the surrealists of the 1960s, like Federico Fellini's Eight and a Half. And so he's walking this really strange line, and I think Leno is perhaps the epitome of this. It's this weird combination of this very realistic, very Italian kind of just people walking around, modernist, very Ulysses in that sense, and then combining that with, of course, the surrealism that comes with that. It's a very strange note of things, combination of notes, I suppose. How would you describe this movie, Andrew?
Yeah, it's just it's a movie that takes place between in a single day and night, and it's just basically about the sort of crumbling marriage between Giovanni and Lydia. And Giovanni is like a famous, well, semi-famous, semi-successful writer, and Lydia, yeah, is his wife, and they're both in, I guess, in different ways, upset with the way that their lives have gone, and they're upset with each other, and it's just kind of like, kind of explodes sort of in this single like day and night.
It's a very quiet film in a lot of ways, not in the sense that there isn't a score. There certainly are some heavy hits, some needle drops, some nice jazz, some Miles Davis, a lot of good stuff there. But in a lot of ways, this film is full of silence, which means the sound design just has to be on point, which I think it really is. It reminds me a lot of Jacques Tati's work, like Playtime. Just a lot of detail into just these tiny things and the way the hospital sounds and the way their footsteps and how this weird city countryside sounds. It's a very mix bag of both the I don't know why I'm struggling to kind of find the words for this, but it's strange because at times it feels very as if you're there, you're in the hospital, you're in the room with them, you're wherever. But then other times there's a sort of surrealness in the sound design, like it sounds off somehow. Some things just don't work right, and I think that's a lot to do with just the theme and kind of the underpinnings of the film itself. Is that you often just feel uncomfortable, you feel weird. Even the opening credits, which I think is absolutely beautiful, is running down an elevator and it's this reflection of a city. And this film is kind of full of reflections and mirrors and doubles and halves and where is the truth lie somewhere in between. And it's interesting that it's about Giovanni, an author, because as an author, he himself is sort of fictionalizing the world. And as we get into it, a lot of the things he talks about is always about how can I turn this into a book? How can I turn this into a poem? And how he connects as an author with the world. And so starting off by having your opening credits run over the reflection of a city creates this sort of experience of both being there but also recognizing your viewer. I think Michelangelo Antonioni is someone who's always very aware of the viewer. He's always very aware that this is a movie, kind of like Jean-Luc Godard in his early stuff, where there's these winks and nods to the audience, and especially in Antonioni's later stuff in the 70s and 80s. But even here, there's a lot of just these little subtle hints that this isn't the real world. Like something's just kind of off.
Yeah, and I think that's just the what like the modern condition, right? And throughout the movie, they kind of they're both like as they go along, and as you learn more about them, they're kind of like a shells of their former self, essentially. Just like the modern world is basically a shell of any kind of, I don't know, like a different material world that came before it. It's completely different, and just like how they're completely different people than when they first met.
And shooting this film in black and white creates these very stark contrasts. I mean, there's very few grays in his films. Like the blacks are very black, the whites are very white. And even in those, especially at night too, yeah. Even in those opening scenes when they're at the hospital, I mean, that hospital just looks so terrifyingly bare. Almost no one is there. All these walls are like this really sharp white. There's these amazing moments where you'll see a character standing against the white wall, and it's just them and the white wall creating this really strange contrast. And it's so quiet. I think that's part of the reason this film is so haunting is even though the sound design is incredible in so many ways, there's a lot of things that are missing. Like it doesn't often sound like it doesn't have all of like the busyness of a hospital. You know, you see like what, four people in the whole hospital. You don't see doctors running around. You never hear like
It's on a very busy floor.
it's not a very busy floor. It's very there's almost something Kafka in the way when you meet the first or only patient other than their friend and her interactions with the nurse. Like she's terrified of the nurse in this weird way and their interactions. It's very surreal in this weird and it's kind of hard to describe. It's kind of hard to pin down. I think it just has something to do with the silence of so much of this film. The not so much what's there, but what's not there. What's purposely kind of taken away, the things that are kind of pulled out of it. It makes for this experience that just feels off-putting.
Yeah. And I would say that both characters also don't really maybe until the end, I guess, say what they mean rarely. So they don't really like express themselves in the way that in a very strong way. Even when they visit their friend, to kind of talk about the beginning of the movie, which I think is one of the best scenes in the movie. They meet their friend Tommaso. He's dying. If you watch a movie and like they go to and someone's dying from a sickness at the beginning of the movie, by the end they'll be dead.
Yeah, it's like Chekhov's gun, right?
Like, why would they recover in any capacity? Anyway, they meet his friend, and their friend is just like, "Yeah, let's party, man. Like, let's have some champagne. Like, look, my mom's here. We're drinking champagne and stuff." And yeah, both Giovanni and Lydia, they're just like obviously like really upset because they like him. Lydia gets to the point where she's so upset that she like leaves. And they're talking to Tommaso, and he's like, "Yeah, Giovanni, you got a new book out. It's awesome. I love it. You're great." And he's like, "Yeah, like it's cool, I guess." He's like, once again, like Giovanni doesn't have like any like strong feelings one way or another. And yeah, I just kind of like that, interaction that they have with Tommaso. It's kind of a good scene. Like it's funny that his mom is there. I don't know. I kind of like that scene.
Yeah, the scene is really depressing in a lot of ways. I mean, beyond the very obvious fact that this is a man who, right before they walk into the room, the doctor's like, "Yeah, this man's gonna die. Like, there's no hope for this man. We know this man's gonna die." And for some reason, they haven't told him yet. So he himself thinks like he's gonna get better. He's gonna be fine. And what's even more depressing is Lydia and Giovanni's feelings toward him. at times at best can be described at pitying him. I mean, Lydia much has much stronger feelings than Giovanni does, but I think one of the things that makes the scene so depressing is that at the end of the day, they don't really care about this man so much. They're kind of just going through the hoops. You know, Thomaso, whatever his name is, describes them as one of his best friends, his only friends. And Giovanni and Lydia are just like, yeah, he's like, we're friends with him, I guess. Like, they describe him later as kind of like just an acquaintance, and they're almost there out of some sort of just duty because they know that he's dying. And if he wasn't dying, they probably wouldn't even be there. And even after Lydia leaves and Giovanni has that conversation with him, the conversation is almost entirely about Giovanni's book, which, I mean, Giovanni is sort of a prick at times and extremely self absorbed and self conceited. And even at this man's deathbed, is more concerned about, well, is this proper literature? He is continuously described as sort of an intellectual, which is kind of just an excuse for someone who is a professional writer but isn't very successful. Like, he's not, he's not a very famous writer. He's too smart, right, to be at the top of the game and to be very successful. And it seems that he's really only there because Lydia asked him to be there.
Yeah, doesn't like Lydia, like towards the end of the movie, doesn't she like expose or say like how much like Tommaso meant to her? Like, doesn't that happen? Giovanni probably doesn't care too much about him, but it seems like Lydia really does.
Yeah, absolutely. Lydia seems to genuinely care for this person. I think that's one of the great disparities or dichotomies in this film is Giovanni is constantly around people. He's constantly seeking attention. He's constantly being friendly to others. Everyone's like, "Oh, you're so friendly. We love you. We love being around you, blah blah blah." But he's incredibly self-conceited and only cares about himself. Where Lydia, on the opposite end of the spectrum, is someone who's almost constantly alone, whether we're talking about, through the first half in the city or the second half at the house. She's almost always by herself. People are always like, why don't you come hang out with us? Why don't you be with us? And even though they've created these perceptions that Giovanni's kind of the friendly, go lucky, be with everyone kind of guy, he's very self conceited. And Lydia, on the other hand, is incredibly caring for those around her, cares so much about Giovanni and Tommaso and all of these other characters, and yet it's so much that she has to kind of hide herself off from that. And so it creates this strange parallel in the sense where even though Lydia's the one that wants to get close to everyone, she's the one who can't because it hurts her. Where Giovanni, it's very easy for him to get close to people because he doesn't really care about them. He's just kind of consumed with his own existence and how great his books are.
He's so cool that even like a sick like woman at the hospital tries to like have sex with him and like almost succeeds. Like he almost succeeds to have sex with this random person, but it's interrupted. That's after he visits Tommaso. He's like this close, um, and then yeah, like he like leaves and he's like okay. They don't say anything to him. Like he like almost tries to like have sex with this random like sick woman and like the nurses like they slap her around, but then he just like leaves. It's like oh, okay.
It's the most 60s, late 50s, early 60s experience of what you think a hospital is like, right? In the sense that she's seems to be there because she's quote unquote sick for what seems to be some sort of psychological reason, which of course you're talking 50s or 60s. Lobotomy is definitely in the cards. It's definitely a possible. Not saying it's going to happen, but it's definitely a possibility, especially in Italy, because Igas Moniz spent a lot of time in Italy, but that's another conversation. But he is about to have sex with this woman who clearly is psychologically, mentally disturbed in some way. And of course, he doesn't give a shit. He's just like, oh, woman, I'm just going to have sex with anything that breathes. Like, you saw her for like 2 seconds. You're like, yeah, I'll have sex with you. And then the nurses come in. And of course, like, they ignore him. He's like, oh, this isn't his fault. Like, he's clearly been seduced by this seductress.
It's totally random, and it's really like only there to like kind of like set up like basically like their first fight pretty much like with a couple.
Absolutely. And you can tell Giovanni, even when he's talking about the experience, he describes it as this almost painful event that happened to him, as if he's the victim in this somehow. When he's in the car with her, he describes it as if he's been seduced and attacked even by this woman. And of course, Lydia kind of sees through it. Lydia isn't exactly on the same page. Like she's she can kind of see where he's, you know, kind of playing a certain game, but it just goes to show how little Giovanni cares for anyone other than themselves. And I kind of wonder what his motivations are for telling Lydia, other than the fact that, again, it's in self interest to kind of save himself, to make it look like he's the victim here. He's the one that should be pitied. He's the one that everyone should be caring about.
Yeah, and then they go to that party, which yeah, it's a party all about Giovanni. You know, he's got a new book out, and it's awesome. You know, there's tons of people there, and they all want to like cozy up to Giovanni because he's cool as fuck. And yeah, there's just like this little thing, and you know, Lydia is there, but she's completely bored. She's totally bored as fuck. And she proceeds to wander the streets of Milan for a whole hour. A whole hour of the movie is spent her walking around Milan, pretty much.
It's almost as if the film can be broken down into two separate films. There is the film in the city, which is the first half of the film, and then the film at the house. And they've kind of juxtaposed each other. I mean, literally, one's entirely in the day, one's entirely at night. And the first half is almost entirely about Lydia. A lot of the film is following her around, following her kind of wander through Milan. It's sort of reminiscent of the Knights of Calvary. And maybe I just think of that because it's kind of around the same time and they're walking around the same parts of Italy, and it has that kind of,
And it's a 1960s movie, and it's an Italian movie, and it's a black and white. And yeah, like
and like Italy in the 60s looks very desolate and just
at least these parts of it. Yeah.
these parts of Italy. I wouldn't say all of Italy, but these parts of Italy, there's kind of this weird juxtaposition of these kind of modern towns and then just these giant pits of dirt and sand and nothingness.
Antonioni always has like these like yeah like he always has like in every single one of these like black and white movies that he makes like in the early 60s there's always like a point where a woman walks around like swaying her hips like around like a town or somewhere um and yeah like it's like the way that it's filmed and edited and shot is trying to like be kind of like impressionistic, I guess you could say, with like the reflections and you know random things happen and a couple I guess different like random things happen to Lydia as she's just like walking around Milan. She sees a street fight. I think it's like the first thing that basically happens, right? She witnesses it.
Yeah, it's like a group of like 10 boys. I mean, young men, they're like 18, 19, 20-year olds. Kids basically, and one kid's beating up another kid pretty brutally. It's pretty intense. And Lydia, of course, feeling some sort of need to end this violence, runs up and is like, "Hey, don't do that. Stop. It's not cool." And the teenagers, young adults, kind of just ignore her, and then most of them walk away except the one who wasn't wearing a shirt, who beat up the other boy. He kind of chases after Lydia for a little bit in a scene that's sort of, it's not clear what his motivations are, but they seem sort of nefarious, I would say. And she's of course terrified because there is this possible suggestion that he might take her over and take advantage of her, something like that. Not that he does or anything like that happens, but there is sort of that suggestion.
Yeah, it just instead and nothing happens and nothing happens instead. Nothing happens at all. And then like yeah, like this happens and then I think she like sees like the rockets, right? Like It's just a bunch of guys, which that's really fun. I'd be there too. I'd be there. Like if I was walking around, yeah, I'd like stand there and like watch for hours, them launching like these like really giant like model rockets and stuff. And she's just like, yeah, this is awesome. She's like, I love this shit. And like eventually she like calls him right and he's like, yo, they're shooting rockets up in the air. You should go check this out. And he's like, okay. And then he like, like leaves and they like kind of have like a moment where they're it's basically like the only like kind of like I guess you could say like nice moment that they have in the entire movie is when they're like reminiscing about the old neighborhood that they used to live in there.
Yeah, it seems, at least to these two characters, the only time they can be happy, the only place they can find any sort of happiness, especially when it comes to each other, is in this nostalgic past. And of course, the thing about a nostalgic past is it's made up, it's pretend, it's this world that doesn't actually exist. One of the things that Antonioni does a ton in this film is he's constantly filming characters behind bars and in claustrophobic environments. So it often feels as if these characters are trapped in their own worlds, that they can't get to each other, that they can't connect with each other, even though there's often these extremely wide expanses and it feels as if this world is infinite. At the same time, whenever they're inside or even next to buildings, they're often enclosed in these tight spaces and they're almost always behind bars, trying to reach through bars, trying to touch each other, but never able to fully communicate with each other, never able to cross paths. And at this moment, it feels as if there's this coming together, but what they're coming together on is a past that no longer exists and possibly never did exist. And that's the only way they can communicate with each other. They can't exist in the now, they can't exist in the future, they can only exist in this pretended past, which is all the more depressing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like I said, it's basically the only like nice moment that I have in the entire movie. Um they're like, yep, we used to live there, and then they leave. They leave and they're like hanging out at the apartment. I like the apartment. The apartment's cool. Antonio's movies, I always like when his movies like I always think the spaces that he films in are kind of neat, like the apartments and houses that he goes into. And they're at the apartment, they're chilling. She's like bathing and they're hanging out, and she's like, "Hey, I want to go out." And Giovanni is like, "Okay, we can do whatever you want. How about we go to this like millionaire that I know?" And she's like, "No, I don't want to do that." I'm like, "Okay, what do you want to do?" It's like, "Well, we should do something." It's like, okay. Um, and they go to like a nightclub where you get this like really long scene where you watch like this like these like this female dancer like do like these seductive performances where she does the thing where like she has like a glass of wine and she does all these like crazy like she like basically like pretzels herself into like these different shapes and but she never like she's always like holding the glass and it never spills and that scene goes on for a long time and they're like having a conversation about I don't know what do you want to do next they're so bored at the even at the like this like swanky nightclub.
Yeah, it's a really interesting scene, and there's definitely a lot kind of going on just under the surface here. I mean, you have these two very sensual, sexual, erotic performers who seem to be very close and connected, and they're doing this incredible dance, and the woman's dance is just absolutely, it's mesmerizing in so many ways, and just the athleticism of it and the beauty of it and the way she can move in all these different directions. And yet, despite the beauty of this, the two main characters, Giovanni and Lydia, are bored. It's as if they can't get any pleasure from themselves, so they try to get it in others. They're basically performing a sexual act via these other individuals, and yet even that isn't enough for them. They just can't seem to connect with each other or anyone. And I think part of it has to do with this idea of this cold, modern aesthetic that's surrounding them, this idea of this individualization of everything and constantly being within yourself and being surrounded by things and stuff, while of course this performance is so bare. I mean, in a very literal sense, right? It's a striptease of sorts, but also in the sense that it's just a man, a woman, a wine glass, and some wine. It's enjoying the finer things in life. It's enjoying the small things in life. And Lydia and Giovanni just can't seem to connect to anything, which of course creates the even greater irony when they go from this to the millionaire's house, because they think, well, if we can't connect to the most primal, the most human thing that could ever happen, perhaps we can instead trick ourselves into being happy with a giant mansion and a party and all the things that go on there.
Yep, they're fucking bored and they want to do something else besides like watch, you know, pretzels. They're like, let's go to the party. Okay. And they go there and the base of the rest of the movie is just a party. Like at this point, this is basically like the meat of the movie, essentially. Where like Giovanni and Lydia, they're there, and Giovanni, I like when they get there and they're like, all the people are like, "Yo, check out this horse." They're like, "Whoa, it's a horse!" I guess in Italy they don't have like a lot of horses. Maybe that's more like an American thing. Maybe I'm wrong about that. That's probably incorrect. But they're like, "Whoa, it's a horse! That's so cool." So yeah, they're like all crowding around it, and Giovanni arrives, and they're like, "Oh shit, it's Giovanni. He's cool." And they're all hanging out and stuff, and like the host is there, and he's like super rich, and they have like a super nice house. The house is really cool. It's got like a pool, and it's like really neat, and it's got all these like different levels. It's like a weird kind of glass modernist 60s house. It's very nice. I like the conversation that Giovanni and the guy have where the guy is just kind of like, yeah, money, it's who gives a shit about it. Like, I just want to like make something awesome. He's basically like does the thing where if you like talk to like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, they would be like, yeah, money doesn't matter. I'm trying to like make something awesome or like epic or something. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, it's definitely not about money at all.
Yeah, something to be said about Michelangelo Antonioni films is they make very good films for film students or people who like to write academic papers on films, because Antonioni at times can be a little heavy-handed with his metaphors. Sometimes they're
Oh, a little.
okay, a lot. Sometimes I mean, of course, the very moment you get to the house, they're looking at a racehorse, which of course can be paralleled to Giovanni, who at the same time is basically, and that's, I mean, what happens in the next couple of scenes is the millionaire treats Giovanni the same way he treats the racehorse, which is it's just this animal or just this thing to own, to control, and to kind of just flaunt about having. It's very clear that the business person doesn't actually care about the author's works or the writings or the arts. It's just about,
Why would he? Why would anyone?
I don't know,
I relate with that. That's the most relatable thing in the entire movie.
but he doesn't care about that shit. He doesn't give a fuck about Giovanni. He doesn't give a fuck about Giovanni's work. He doesn't care anything about art or artistic integrity.
He's just kind of like famous and
Yeah, he just wants someone because he's an intellectual. As Lydia says just a couple of scenes earlier, every millionaire needs their intellectual, and Giovanni just happens to be this millionaire's intellectual. It's just something, it's a trophy of sorts. It's really just something to own, to control.
yeah. And you're basically talking about the fact that like later on in the movie, the guy's like, hey, you should work for my company. You should like basically like be my PR person is basically what he wants him to be.
And it's very clear that he doesn't need Giovanni. Like, he's not there because he's like, oh, you'd be really great at being a PR person. Or like he even knows any of Giovanni's stuff. It's just because he's Giovanni, and look how good it will make his company look, and look how good it'll make him look. And but he doesn't care about money. He's beyond those things. He's one of those millionaires or billionaires that doesn't care about money.
Yeah, they kind of philander at the party and flounder and they kind of like meet people and they talk and stuff. And of course, you meet the daughter. I think Giovanni meets the daughter of the millionaire, which, by the way, like picking this movie was a little timely because this character is played by Monica Vitti and she died at the beginning of this month.
Really? That's too bad.
Yeah, she died at the beginning of February. Yeah. If there's one like good thing that comes out of like watching these like early 60s Antonioni movies, it's the performances of Monica Vitti. She's awesome and she's very lovely to look at. In this movie, she's like very like she has like a very like 60s kind of hip black hairdo, and she wears a black dress and stuff, and she's definitely the best character in the movie. I like her a lot. Giovanni and her, they meet and they kind of sort of hit it off. Like they play this like little game where they have to slide this thing across the floor, and yeah, they like kind of sort of hit it off. Not in a really like strong way, I guess though.
Valentina is an interesting character because in many ways she is juxtaposing but also paralleling Lydia, and perhaps that's part of the reason that Giovanni is so interested in her, because Valentina, much like Lydia, is off on her own. She's not with other people. Although you could argue that the reasons that they're by themselves are very different. And the moment the two of them meet is one of my favorite moments in the film. I think it's one of the coolest and most interesting shots in cinema. It's just absolutely brilliant, and you really don't know what you're looking at first, but what you're basically watching is, at first you see Valentina throwing a makeup square of like foundation or something across this checkerboard style of tile, and then you notice that there's a reflection somewhere, so you can also see kind of part of outside, like a bench or something, and she's like stepping through it, and then Giovanni steps into frame, and then there's these weird sort of reflections going on, and then when they pan across, when Giovanni walks up to Valentina, you realize that everything you've been looking at have all been reflections, and it's just because of the way the house is built. There's like two windows at a 90-degree angle, so you're looking at a reflection through a second reflection, and it just creates this weird, strange set of layers and reflections, and you don't know what's real and what's not. It's one of the most mind-blowing shots, in my opinion. It's every time I watch that scene, it's just so inventive, so thoughtful, and of course, it's suggesting the themes that have been going out the entire movie. This idea of, what's real, what's not, what's a reflection of yourself, what are you sort of painting a picture of what's really you, and what's just this idea of you, what you see yourself as. And I guess in a lot of ways, Giovanni is supposed to be exposing himself at this moment, right? He's walking out of his reflection, he's moving away from his reflection and into this so-called reality. But by doing that, he's exposing the fact that, again, all Giovanni really cares about is himself and sex.
Hell yeah. And sex is definitely what he's going to get. No, I'm kidding. He doesn't have any sex. He gets caught, he tries to like kiss Valentina, and Lydia sees him. It's like, oh shit, like she saw Lydia, like she keeps getting like beaten down. Like she sees Giovanni kiss, and then like shortly after she gets like a call from she gets a call from the hospital that says like Tommaso died, and of course she's very upset. I think Giovanni and her kind of have like an awkward conversation as well after that.
A depressing series of events that, of course, starts off with the checkerboard scene, which, another thing I love about that scene is it starts off with just the two of them, and they're just playing back and forth, and then I think one of them's like about to leave, and then cut to, there's like 20 people there. Like the whole party is basically, of course, everyone but Lydia is there watching these two play, and they're betting on each other. And again, this whole racehorse thing comes into play, where he's like, Giovanni's like, I'm not going to play for money. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not a racehorse, blah, blah, blah. And someone steps in or whatever, which of course, at this point, perhaps is a little heavy handed. But again, the idea of this strange thing where Giovanni, at the same time, wants everyone to love him, wants everyone to think just about him, only wants to talk about himself, but at the same time wants to create the illusion that he's not this trophy, he's not this toy, he's not this thing to be played with. And I think that's one of his own big struggles, is he really doesn't want to be perceived as he actually is. Like, even though the fact that he's basically just a token person, like his whole existence at this party is just because it looks cool for him to be there. Like no one really knows who he is or has read any of his stuff. They kind of just pretend because he's like the token artist. He's the token author. But at the same time he also enjoys it because then everyone thinks he's this great intellectual when the fact is you really never know if Giovanni is an intellectual or not because you never actually read much or any of his stuff. Like you don't actually know if he's any good at his job or not.
It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really matter. He says like probably one of the better lines in the movie is when he says that like I only like write from my memories now. Like he's not even he's not even like smart. He just kind of like is recounting things that previously happened to him, you know. Anyone can do that.
But Lydia witnesses the kiss. She learns about the death. She's pretty torn up about it, as anyone would be. I think it's interesting that she does not tell Giovanni until almost the very end of the night. Well, really, not until it's daytime again. She kind of just holds on to it and keeps it to herself. And I think that's one of the big struggles of Lydia in the film is whenever she experiences pain, when something painful happens to her, she always tucks it in. She always goes inward. She never goes to others. She always feels like Atlas in a sense, where she has to carry up the whole world on her own shoulders and she can't be with anyone else because sharing that pain with anyone else, I suppose, is somehow selfish or self-indulgent.
Yeah, Lydia is definitely the most like beaten down character for sure. She's definitely the most she definitely bears the brunt of the movie's difficulties. But you know, she does enjoy herself. She does like the music there, and in fact she likes it so much that she likes one of the musicians there, or maybe not a musician, just like a guy there. And they hit it off, right? And like they dance and they chill and stuff like that. And I think then like it starts to like rain really hard, and that kind of creates some pandemonium. Like people like they jump in the pool and they're running around, and they have that one interesting part where like Lydia is about to like jump in from the diving board. She's like feeling herself, and then Roberto is like, "No, you shouldn't do that." And like he kind of like puts her in his car and they drive away. I'm guessing that just means like it's kind of hard to like say what like I guess what they're trying to say there. I'm guessing it's something like extremely like on the nose, something like she was gonna kill herself, or like she was gonna like maybe not kill herself, but maybe just like I don't know, maybe like the idea of like men keeping her from doing what she really wants to do.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with this idea of releasing inhibitions. I mean, of course, a lot of the people at the party just immediately jump in the pool and they're all extremely drunk. It's clear that most of the people at the party just don't give a shit about anything, and there's certainly a lot to be said about the wealthy class in this film and the way Antonioni sees this sort of class of leisure in the sense that they don't really have a purpose. They don't really have like anything to do. Like when you're that wealthy, there's just no motivations. You don't give a shit about anything. You just do whatever the fuck you want. And Lydia, as Giovanni points out, or rather someone talking to Giovanni points out earlier in the film, is from a very wealthy family, and it seems they've been living off of, at least partly off of her stipend for the last so many years. But Lydia doesn't feel a part of this world the same way others do, the same way the most of the leisure class does. And maybe that's partly because she met Giovanni, this poor, struggling artist at the time, and she got to experience a different sort of life. And when she tries to get back into this world, jump into the pool, release all those inhibitions, which she seems hesitant about, she's immediately pulled away by someone like Roberto, who she seems to only go with because
Get back at Giovanni.
basically, I mean, she doesn't really seem to care about Roberto at all. She just wants to make Giovanni feel like shit, which of course Giovanni
It
doesn't
doesn't really matter at all.
doesn't care. Does not care at all.
And in fact, like Giovanni, like soon after that, Giovanni once again tries to like get Valentina, and Valentina is just kind of like, yeah, no, like I don't really want to like break up a marriage or anything. Like his like everything is so like everything is so fucked up and embarrassing, and like like not cool that even he doesn't get what he wants. Like, like even he like this guy, even he doesn't really even like get what he wants. She like kind of rebuffs him a little bit.
Yeah, Giovanni has one thing and one thing only on his mind, and Valentina, being a good human being,
At least during this time, at least during this like night, I
yeah, at
guess.
least at this moment, she does not give in to his seducting ways. And even though he goes into her room, they have kind of this back and forth, and he's a little pushy, I guess would be one word for it. She holds her ground pretty well, and like, hey, this just isn't. This is what I do, man. Like, clearly you are a sexy man, but like I'm not about that life, man. I gotta do my thing. And then of course Lydia comes back, and they kind of have a back and forth between Lydia and Valentina, which I think is a really,
Yeah, that part of his movie is good. Like the three of them interacting together.
it's a very awkward and embarrassing moment. Like you feel, at least I felt very kind of awkward because it's very clear that everyone knows exactly what's going on. Like no one's, it's not like anyone's out of the loop at this point. And of course, like all of the film, no one ever says what they want to say. No one says what they want, no one says what they needs, no one says what they desires. It's people always talking around each other. No one ever talks to each other. A lot of this film is written more like prose than it is dialogue, in the sense that it's not conversations where you say something and then I say something and we go back and forth. It's as if these two people are just talking, like these two, three, four, whatever, how many people are just sitting in a room, and they're all having conversations with themselves, but none of them are talking to each other.
I like the guy who's sitting. I like the guy who falls asleep, and I think Valentina's like, "Oh, wake up." It's like, what if something happens? And I think Giovanni's like, nothing ever happens. That's another one of my favorite like moments in the movie. What if something happens? Nothing ever happens. Yeah, but what if something does? That reminds me of the really good Michelle Welbeck quote where he says, "A lot can happen in life, especially nothing."
Yeah, that definitely sums up the movie in a lot of ways, where Valentina is young, impressionable. She believes that this world is a genuinely good place and full of good people, and she can't sleep ever because she'll miss a moment of it. She's recording everything, where Giovanni feels like life has passed him by. There's nothing worth living for. Nothing matters. I think that's part of the reason why he's so obsessed with himself, why he's so obsessed with approval, why he's so obsessed with sex. Because in those moments, you can kind of get out of your obsession with the future, obsession with the bleak nothingness of eternity, and sort of live in the moment. Where Valentina seems to be one of the few characters who is able to just be happy with who she is, with what she is. I mean, it helps that she's the daughter of a millionaire. Like, that doesn't hurt. But she is able to exist outside of this paradigm that everyone else seems to be living in.
It's true. She's the best character. She's the most interesting character. That pretty much concludes their conversation. I mean, they pretty much like they basically all three of them just kind of are just like, yep, that's pretty much the end of our trifecta here. Like, they're just kind of they both like recognize like the situation that they're in, and they all are just kind of like, yep, I bid you adieu or whatever. They just kind of like leave each other. And yeah, like it's like I think morning by that point, right? Like there's like the band is still playing there, and yeah, and I think you get kind of like the final part of the movie, which is just like a conversation between the two of them.
Yeah, I think that's the final scene of the film is Lydia and Giovanni are walking away from the big house. People are kind of spread about, either drunkenly still listening to this band that keeps playing, or asleep in different parts of the house, or wherever. Lydia and Giovanni have this conversation in which Lydia first confesses the death of their friend, and Giovanni sort of pretends to be hurt by it, but pretty quickly moves on from it. And she describes the reason that she fell in love with Giovanni, which is because when she was younger, her best friend was the friend who died, and he was just this entirely selfless person. Like he only cared about her, he only cared about others. He loved her with all of his heart and did everything for her and only talked about her and never himself. And she describes this as being a incredibly annoying feature and something that she didn't really care for. And so when she met Giovanni, Giovanni was the first person in her life that only cared about himself, which is a weird reason to be attracted to someone, but I guess it happens.
Yeah, and they both and basically like she's just like, yeah, I don't really love you like at all. And Giovanni's like, well, I love you. You know, he's kind of like holding on to like it pretty tightly, I think.
Yeah, he's holding on more to the idea of loving her than actually loving her because his actions clearly prove that he doesn't love her at all, or at least not very much. He doesn't seem to care about her. He doesn't seem to care about anyone other than himself, and for being honest, he doesn't even seem to care about himself all that much. And of course, this conversation ends with a note. Lydia pulls out a note from her pocket and she reads it in full, and it's a love letter of sorts. And as she finishes the letter, Giovanni asks her who wrote that wonderful letter. And Lydia's like, you wrote it. This proves that we're not in love. It's a really long love letter, and it proves that we're not in love because when you wrote this, you were in love with me, and this was your proof of love. And the fact that you don't even remember that you wrote it in itself is enough proof that you don't love him anymore. And at that point, he attempts to have,
Just like falls on top of her.
yes, he attempts to have sexual relations with her, and she doesn't really seem to be into it.
She's like, no, I don't love you. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
It's a pretty tragic, intense ending. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's a rape scene necessarily.
No, it's not. It's just kind of like,
It's not, it's not a rape scene.
is there just like a pathetic, desperate moment?
Yes. It's a pathetic, desperate moment in which he is trying to grasp at this love that doesn't exist through sexual emotions because that's the only way he knows how to express and feel and love anymore. And she feels like sex at this point is worthless, meaningless. It is not an expression of love. And then you pull away as they sort of start to get into it with her saying, I don't love you, I don't love you, and him trying to convince himself that he loves her when it's clear that he's only partaking in this act to prove something that doesn't actually exist.
Yep. That's the end of the movie. That's the end of the film. It's sad. Yeah, that's the movie. Austin, rating and final thoughts.
I absolutely love Antonioni. He has long been one of my favorite directors. First discovered him when I was in high school with La Ventura through the incredible Filmstruck, which is no more and still breaks my heart to this day. His films have always meant a hell of a lot to me, especially when I was 16, 17, 18 years old, because this is clearly a man who just knows what the fuck he's doing when it comes to holding a camera and filmmaking. And I always found that incredibly inspirational. I found his films to be visually magnificent, and I haven't seen Le Note since maybe 2015, so it's probably been 7 years since I've seen this film. And I think it lives up to everything I remember it being. It's beautiful, it's surreal, it's depressing. Not a whole lot happens, and I kind of love that. I kind of love the fact that there's very little that happens in this film, and it's just people walking around being sad, looking at desolate Italy. There are some very incredible techniques camera wise, some really cool shots, some really interesting performances. I love the sound design. I love the weird jazz music that's kind of thrown in there. I love everything about this film. So I'm gonna give this a 10 out of 10 because I have no complaints. I have zero complaints. I just love everything about it.
I don't think I've like seen a movie like this disappointing since I saw Bergman's Seventh Seal. just in terms of watching a movie that has such like a built up like reputation, and then you watch it and you're just like, wow, I got like nothing out of that. I got like very little out of this. Like this is just like empty, like for me at least. Like I think everything that you said about it is true throughout the whole our whole conversation. I think everything you say about it is like 100% true. Like it's very like well shot, it looks beautiful, you know. I think it's well framed, everything looks good. I think like the performances from the two lead people have a lot to be desired. Like I don't think they were that good, you know. I like a movie too where nothing happens, but this is a movie where like not only does nothing happen, but I feel like nothing from it. You know, like it just completely like I don't know what it is. I just feel like it's just completely devoid of anything like fundamentally like moving in which like you would want to watch a movie for, you know, like you know, we could talk all day about like, oh, this means that, and like this is this way because of this, you know what I mean? But like, if like just like finishing the movie, just like I felt completely empty and I didn't feel sad or like happy, or I just felt like almost nothing, like at all. Like that's just really how it is, you know. It's just I don't know what it is, you know. I tried hard to kind of like sit back and kind of, you know, just kind of like take it all in, and it's a very sexy movie, you know. 60s Italy looks great. Big fan of Monica Vitti, like I said. But I don't know, man. Like it's just extremely disappointing for me. I just don't find it fun to watch. I like, you know, like a good miserable, sad movie about people who are like upset about themselves or their relationship. This is just a movie that I just think like has nothing going on with it. It has nothing going on, has nothing to say. Sorry, it has a lot to say, but the result is that I end up feeling absolutely nothing. So it's like it's impressive. Just it just doesn't do anything for me personally. So I'll give it like a 5 out of 10.
No, I definitely see where you're coming from, and I can definitely understand the lack of feeling after finishing this film. There's definitely something empty about this film, but I think that's for me. That's one of the things that draws me to it is I like the emptiness of it and the feeling. I mean, it's not a good feeling necessarily, but I don't know. I also came from. I mean, there's also the thing that you have to consider, which is when I first watched this film, I was 18, so I'm always gonna have that experience. I mean, when I watch The Graduate, I'm always gonna see it as I did when I was 16. So, coming at it at 25 years old, different experience. And also, I didn't know what Lenote was when I saw it, so I didn't have any expectations that you have. And I sold it to you as one of my favorite Antonioni films, so I'm sure that didn't help either. But
Before this, I watched Blow Up, which I think has a much stronger like. I think that's just that movie just has like a much stronger story. Like for me, that just has like more things, more interesting things going on. Even though like maybe La Note is probably like a better looking movie, I think like Blow Up just has like a much way more like interesting like concept and idea that just is like, you know, feels like creepy and like kind of disgusting. You know, I think that movie more than La Note sort of signifies the kind of crumbling of, you know, the modernist world as it was at that time, and kind of like how fucked up it is. And Lenote is just kind of like, you know, they don't love each other anymore. So what? Like, you know, like I don't care.
yeah, I mean, I love Blow Up. I think Blow Up is a near perfect film, and I think a lot of Antonioni's work is absolutely incredible. The only films I don't like of his is there was a film he did that takes place on a boat. I didn't really get that film. It's supposed to be like a comedy. It came out in like the 80s or something. I didn't really get it. I found it to be really slow and boring, but otherwise, I found most of his work to be incredible. And I think Blow Up is just a whole nother world.
Yeah, it's definitely very different. Because like, yeah, that's a British movie. That's a these are like really like very Italian movies, while Blow Up is a very like British movie. Which, you know, Italian, British, you know, whatever, like they're both, you know, whether a movie is like Italian or British, it doesn't really matter to me as long as the movie is good. But I don't know. I think I prefer that story a lot. Like it's a badass story.
All right, y'all. Thank you for listening. Thank you to our wonderful editor, Shannon. They are one of the best in the industry and certainly the only person that could edit this podcast. And you can find anything I do at Austin Lugo 12.
can find me on Twitter at 80harp24, and I'm also on Letterboxd at RetroAndrew, RETR0Andrew.
And you can find this podcast wherever you hear podcasts. You can also find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at the With Nothing to Say pod. And please, for exclusive content, go to patreon.com/lifethroughfiction. That's patreon.com/lifethroughfiction. And thank you all for listening.
Thanks so much.